So what's your favorite movie of 1969? What are your three favorite movies of 1969?
Oh, gosh. Three favorite movies of 1969. I think 1969, that's actually not that great of a year, to tell you the truth. Off the top of my head, I think my three favorite movies are, it would probably be one of the spaghetti westerns. I actually think, I think it's 1969 as well, is Yellow Submarine. The Monkees movie Head, which I believe is 1969. Head is a fucking masterpiece, if you ask me. Yeah, directed by Bob Rafelson, written by Jack Nicholson.
And kind of panned at the time, right?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, I think that would definitely be in my top 5 movies in 1969, but even with if I gave this really serious consideration. That's a pretty hippy-dippy version, too.
Yeah, that's because Head is very trippy.
Yeah.
Easy Rider, starring the aforementioned Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, Jack Nicholson. Well, Easy Rider is, when Columbia threw out their catalog of films to choose for the 60s, the du jour one that, of course, I'm going to choose is going to be Easy Rider. It's might be the single greatest example of 60s cinema in almost every way, because of both the culture it projects, the aesthetic it projects, and just even the idea that finally a movie and the counterculture hooked up with each other in a way that the people of that culture actually accepted Easy Rider.
Yeah.
Because I think before that, even though biker films had existed, and Peter Fonda in particular, and Roger Corman's Wild Angels, which started the whole biker film subgenre that this is officially a part of, even though it's not coming from the Hells Angels point of view. There still always was an aspect of an older generation who doesn't quite understand it, making these movies for a younger generation that are ultimately too hip to buy Hollywood's version of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a common case in a lot of Hollywood movies where they try to capitalize on a movement, or a youth movement in particular, and try to regurgitate a movie for that movement. It's usually seen as the fraud that it usually is. Not always, but usually is. But that was not the case with Easy Rider. One, it wasn't a studio movie. BBS made it. They had an output deal with Columbia, but they were able to truly do their own thing. So because Dennis Hopper was able to kind of do what he wanted, he created a new type of movie, and it caught on with audiences because it felt like, oh, hey, this is a movie for us by people like us. It's talking to us. It's not interpreting for us.
Right.
And it's not talking down to us. I think Alice's Restaurant fits into that category as well. Positively, the two early Greenwich Village De Palma movies, Greetings and Hi Mom, absolutely feel like they were made by the people of the counterculture for said culture. But what makes Easy Rider different from the rest was it's just incredible, phenomenal success. An interesting thing also about Easy Rider, before we get into watching the film, is Easy Rider probably is one of the most specific movies probably ever released by a Hollywood studio that is specific to its era. It captures the 60s in a way that's tangible. And so almost in a way, if you're trying to describe to somebody the 60s in terms of movies, you could show them Easy Rider and never have to show them anything else.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting thing about that because of that, Easy Rider kind of goes in and out of fashion. There are times in the 50 years since Easy Rider has been made that it looks more dated than it does. Like today, I don't think Easy Rider looks incredibly dated. But in the 80s, it looked very dated when you watched Easy Rider. It seemed like a document of its time, and this was not its time. But then in the 90s, it didn't look so dated.
And especially
And now it doesn't look so
now.
dated. I think Easy Rider is part of a group of what I call American outlaw movies that were all made by directors that made a special kind of movie their own way, without not much help from outside forces, and kind of forced the movie together their way, and then much to everybody's surprise, that movie did well nationwide, all right, where it became very popular in a way that couldn't be predicted, but not like a Los Angeles success or like a New York success, like like for instance the De Palma movies we mentioned before, Greetings to the High Mom. That didn't do well all over the place, but it did very well in New York. But there was a group of movies that actually kind of came out like what I'm talking about, and they actually went nationwide. They actually did well, eventually nationwide, and that and I think that list would include George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. I think it includes Melvin Van Peebles. This is not in any order. Melvin Van Peebles' Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. It includes Russ Meyer's Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, Tom Laughlin's Billy Jack, and Dennis Hopper's Easy Rider. And Easy Rider, almost like Rosemary's Baby or something, made about something like $30 million back when, that was an astronomical amount. I mean, they would spend, in the 60s, they would spend $2 million or $2.5 million on a movie, and that would be like a lot of money spent on a movie. And if it made $12 million, that was considered fantastic. We did great with that. And then Easy Rider just was just went through the roof. Henry Fonda said, "God, Peter made a movie that made almost more money than all my movies put together." There was no expectations, all right, least of all from Dennis and Peter. They're outlaw movies that these directors made, that they knew what they wanted to do, and they made their kind of movie. And frankly, they were kind of first for their time in almost every aspect. And then they came out and, like an unsigned band that comes out and becomes, and has like the hit of the year. That's what these movies kind of represented. One of the things that was also kind of fascinating about Easy Rider, especially at its time, was one of the things that made the movie commercial, along with the performances, along with the costumes, along with the music, along with all the accoutrement that the film offers, was its ending. Its nihilistic ending, the idea that the characters would die senselessly for no reason whatsoever, and just be left there, their blood staining the asphalt. And that became one of the commercial aspects of the movie, because it kind of promoted a new view amongst young people in America. Is, well, you can't win.
Yeah.
It was a very nihilistic time in America when it came to thinking about the America we had grown up in, the America we had been told what America is, the apple pie image. And Easy Rider kind of flies in the face of that. In fact, the most famous scene is the campfire scene where they dissect it. For your freedom, yeah.
Yeah.
You go, yeah. Well, isn't it what freedom's all about, man? Well, that's what they say.
Yes.
It's all about. But when they meet a person who's really free,
Right.
that they can't have that.
Yes.
And so, and this would get worse as the 70s go on with Watergate. All of our institutions we had been taught were all found to be wormy and full of wormholes, and that even became a big thing in cinema itself, where it was like, to some degree or another, almost the reason to do historical pictures is to show the fraud that historical pictures in Hollywood had been up until now. Mm-hmm. With Easy Rider, it's a worldview. It's a worldview, and in a strange way, if you think about it, it's, I hadn't thought about this before until just now. In a weird way, the ending is actually what makes Easy Rider have a story. I don't even know if you could say Easy Rider has a story until the ending.
Yeah. Because
the ending makes what's happened before a story.
Yeah.
It makes them martyrs. In particular, they have to get killed by that especially ugly redneck. Almost what makes it a story and what makes it martyrs is that those guys killed him. Mm-hmm. If they were just hit by a big rig, that came out of nowhere when they were crossing the highway, well, that's not an ending to their journey. That's
Yeah.
that's just an accident. And if they were killed by cops, well, that's almost too much of a pointed.
Right.
That's okay. Now we got to make bad guys. But in a weird way, it's like those hippies are truly representing the old America. I don't think it was actually. I mean, well, I think it probably was for the first few audiences, but then I actually think people knew it. I think at a certain point it became so successful. I think people at a certain point knew it going in, that was going to how it was going to be, and because their friends told them about it.
Horror has a face, and you must make a friend of horror.
Well, there's a whole speech in Apocalypse Now when Brando's Kurtz tells the story of going into the village and inoculating all the children in the village, shooting their arms with flu shots or something like that, inoculating them. And then the soldiers came in and then hacked off all the kids' arms. And then there's like a little pile of arms.
There they were, in a pile of little arms.
And Kurt says, so we did all that, and then we came back in the village, and the next time we saw the little pile of all the little arms in there where they hacked them off. And I cried like a baby. Then I started thinking, the genius of that.
And I thought, my God, the genius of that.
The genius of that. Because these are not monsters. They're not demons. These are men doing a job.
But these were not monsters. These were men, trained cadres.
And they had the force of will to take the job and take it to its logical conclusion of what they had to do.
The genius, the will to do that.
All right, I'm not condoning what Kurtz is saying. Kurtz is a fucking crazy person, right? But I'm interested in his perspective. But of course, of course, that would be Kurtz's perspective, where he's a god. He's a god, worshipped by these natives. Yeah. He's completely lost his mind in the fog of war. But he's talking like Genghis Khan. Okay, Apocalypse Now, which was, to me, Rocky was my personal favorite movie, but Apocalypse Now was the movie of the year, as far as I was concerned. And I took the bus to Hollywood to see it at the Cinerama Dome, and got the program that they gave out, and I still have the Life magazine with Brando on the cover.
Oh, wow.
I was into everything about Apocalypse Now. I've been reading about it for years. Couldn't wait to see it. That's one that I imagine being one of the guys on the boat. That would have been amazing.
There's this really great story about Francis Ford Coppola doing all the whole Robert Duvall sequences in Apocalypse Now. And, they're using the helicopters to the Filipino airport, and he's paying for everything himself, and it's just all the incredible pressures of trying to do this. It's almost unimaginable. But him and Victoria Storaro come up with realized, much to his horrible chagrin, because he needs to get footage shot, much to his horrible chagrin, that if the helicopters aren't in the background, it just doesn't work. It's just dead. You can't have just the helicopters a little bit. After you've established the helicopters have to be flying in the air behind every single solitary shot. Okay, I didn't quite have as much of a problem as Francis Ford Coppola did, but I did tell the people, I go, look, if there's any shot in Swan Ranch, I need to have a dog in the background. I mean, there can never be a shot that I don't see a dog doing something, because that was kind of what it was like. They had a lot of dogs there, and that means the place is alive. Yeah. That means it's living. That means it's crawling. That means it's got fleas. And that means it's scrounging. And it's just there's a movement. There's always movement going on. The place is alive, and there's always some living thing running from one pile of trash to another. Right. In the background, just keep it going.